Hello everyone, my name is Gabia and I'm a product marketing manager here at Oxylabs. Today I'll be your host and we will be discussing the importance of ethicality in web scraping. So in particular, we will be talking about the ethical acquisition of residential proxies as they are very susceptible to these issues. During this webinar, we'll explain why is it important to pay attention on how residential proxies are made and what causes them to be perceived as unethical. We'll also go over the risks companies take when they utilize unethically sourced proxies. So the overall topics we'll be discussing are how residential proxies are made, what effect residential proxy origin has on businesses that use them, how different residential proxy acquisition methods affect internet users, all industry residential proxy acquisition practices from the most to the least ethical, and where Oxylabs residential proxies come from. For the discussion, we invited Vital Shadis, our head of risk management, to talk more about the matter at hand and discuss the overall need for transparency in web scraping industry. So, hello, Vital.
Thanks, Gabia. Hey, guys. Indeed, residential proxies is a technology which can bring a lot of value to your business. From the risk management perspective, we look not only into ensuring stability and quality of your day-to-day operations, but also how we source these residential proxies and how we determine if these residential proxies pass the bar of our grading scale, which we will also discuss today.
So before we start discussing the matter of ethical proxy sourcing, let's first discuss how residential proxies are made to begin with, as the process of creating them have an impact on the security of your company. Now, most of you are very familiar how residential proxies are made. It is an IP address issued by an internet service provider, also known as ISP, and to a device attached to a physical location. This means that every residential proxy has an owner, a person who consciously chooses an ISP and uses their mobile device for their needs. So the fact that a real person is involved in this process makes the residential proxy acquisition a sensitive topic ethically. So the most common and well-known way of acquiring proxies is through apps. The usual route is this. A person installs an app on their mobile device or a laptop or a tablet. The app usually includes a code that allows third parties to route internet traffic through these devices. So this is the most basic and common ways residential proxies are made. And of course, this sort of proxy acquisition can have its downsides when done incorrectly and potentially have bad effects on the people of the devices and businesses that acquire proxies in such matter. So Vaidotai, as an expert on this matter, could you please tell us what could be the effects on the people that have such devices on their mobile phones or mobile devices?
Yes, absolutely. So you may have already heard the saying, if you're not paying for the product, then you are the product itself. The same can be applied to applications which are free, but for some reason are regularly maintained and updated. In a worst case scenario, such apps require significant permissions, like access to your camera, location, and are active while you're not even using them. This would be happening without your permission and consent. Regular users might just want to install a simple Sudoku game while just trying to fill in the time while waiting for a doctor's visit and end up having an app which is active while you even restart your device and drains your battery and network resources. In such cases, the end user accidentally becomes a participant of the proxy network without agreement and full consent or even awareness.
And let's not forget that businesses that do proxy acquisition incorrectly might put their reputation on the line and risk their business integrity amongst their clients and general public.
Yes, indeed. And reputational damages are not even the greatest risk associated with the use of unethical proxies. While you're running your data operations through a residential network, you worry about speed, stability, and the quality of the process. The least thing you want to worry about is the legal and ethical aspects of the proxy providers, the rails which feed data into your infrastructure. This may impact your business as such proxies might be unstable as they get blocked by antivirus software while getting detected and being reported as being malicious. Confidential information risks also exist here. In theory, unethical app developers might even place man-in-the-middle attacks and start monitoring your traffic and even possibly obtain even more sensitive information, such as content of your request or even passwords. What next follows is the obvious legal and financial risks. The use of unethically sourced proxies through illegal botnets can lead to external legal issues, particularly in case of class action lawsuits. Should your company be found responsible for damages connected to these claims, you may be subjected to litigation and expensive legal fees.
To better orient in the web scraping sphere, Oxylabs mapped out 4 categories of proxy acquisition practices, which is A+, A, B, and C. For instance, Tier A and A+ models rely on cooperation with people by ensuring their explicit consent and awareness to share their device and resources through a downloadable app. So the categories were built around 4 main criteria, which is financial reward, clear information, user awareness, and user consent. And based on which criteria the company meets, they get put into a specific tier. So let's go over the tiers C and B first. C is usually a malware that automatically adds people and makes it hard or sometimes impossible to leave or delete the app from your device.
Yes, for C tier, which is the lowest, then end user has not even provided their consent to become part of the network. So, as I have shared previously, this would be an ordinary looking app such as Sudoku game, and that application would just route your traffic through your device without your awareness and consent. That basically means that unknown entities might be using your device for unknown purposes.
And B tier is when the device that is connected has user consent, but the true awareness level of that is quite questionable.
Exactly. Tier B proxies already ensure that the consent is received upon the point when the app is asking for permissions. However, that does not ensure that the user actually understands why these permissions were required and how the application is actually going to behave.
These practices cause some serious ethical issues, as B tier can have some complex issues when it comes to consent and prevents true awareness, whereas C tier is simply illegal abuse of people's devices.
As we are aware of such risks, we at Oxylabs are doing thorough investigation of each supplier, making sure that it accurately and clearly indicates how the app is going to share users' network and resources in exchange for usage of the app. If the supplier does not meet our criteria or is no longer able to ensure users' awareness, we are then not hesitant to close the business relationship with such provider.
It is worth noting that during the years of working in the proxy service market, we saw that this is not at all a straightforward process. Acquiring user consent can be really tricky, and at Oxylabs we have acquired a lot of experience regarding user consent. If you want to hear more about the best practices regarding user consent, please join us at OxyCon, our web scraping conference. As everything these days, it will be online and it is also completely free, so available to all. So go ahead and register. You can do that via a link we shared in the chat. So let's move on to A+ and A models and discuss them in greater detail. Tier A model guarantees that people clearly see what the app intends to do. The information regarding using the app's owner as a residential proxy is not hidden and has been formulated clearly. Now, this ensures high levels of awareness and ensures confirmed user consent. Whereas for Tier A+ model, it takes a step forward and guarantees not only strong user awareness through, let's say, questionnaires, press releases, or social media, but also rewards their users financially. Now, this reward system must outline how much the participant of the residential proxy pool will receive based on their shared gigabytes. So from what we're talking about, it might seem like we're selling proxies, but however, this is not the case. So Vaidotai, could you please explain to the audience what makes us different?
Sure. From Oxylabs' perspective, we're working with suppliers to ensure we have consistent coverage throughout different geographies, and we have big dedicated development teams that ensure that these exit nodes that we receive from our suppliers are top-notch quality and are eligible to be used for our customers. We have also dedicated account managers in place to help you out throughout every customer journey cycle, from the onboarding to the actual usage of our proxies and scraping. What's more, all of our products are insured with technology errors and omissions and cyber insurance. At the end of the day, what makes us different from other providers is that we ensure that you are using ethically sourced A and A plus tier residential proxy network. We are also offering static residential network proxies, which also falls under this category as they are also completely ethical. They are officially assigned by an internet service provider, ISP, and allow you to browse the internet through the eyes of a genuine customer.
So to be an ethical business in same frame of A plus and A tiers, it really boils down to choosing an ethically sound residential proxy service provider. We'll discuss how to identify and choose such a provider in Oxycon. So as I mentioned earlier, you can just go and find that registration link in the chat. Now, we understand that the criteria for entering to top tier A plus seem nearly impossible. However, there are rare gems out there that match this model perfectly. So Vaidotai, how does Oxylabs work on tier A and A plus models?
That's a good question. As the market leaders in this industry, we believe that we should continue shaping and educating our customers, suppliers, and other market participants on the ethical and sustainable way of maintaining a residential proxy network. We are requiring suppliers to ensure that not only consent is present, the user also has to understand how this application is behaving in exchange to providing benefit for the device owner. We are also seeing an emergence of new type of applications which are able to provide direct rewards to the users in exchange to sharing their network resources. These might be gift cards or even monetary reward, and the end users are actually highly incentivized using this app. One of these apps that we are using is called Honeygain, which we recently announced an exclusive to the residential proxy market wholesale contract with them, and we are really excited about it.
This is indeed really good news, as this in the end helps us not only keep up with the new standards of the market, but also allows us to educate the market on the issues that non-ethical proxy sourcing can bring to a business. Alright, so let's move on to the questions that we received from our listeners during their registration. And the first question is, what questions should a company ask their proxy provider to make sure their proxies are properly sourced?
Alright, I'll take this one. Well, you can refer to the tiers that we have provided. You can ask whether a proxy supplier ensures that the consent is received, how they ensure that the user actually understands what the app is doing and how it's going to behave, and lastly, you can ask what the users are getting in exchange for usage of this app.
Alright, so let's move on to the second question. And what answers would indicate that their proxies may come from suspicious sources?
Yeah, so well, first of all, if the proxy provider is not able to share anything, that's already a big red flag. Next thing is, you should be able to clearly receive information how they're ensuring that the consent and awareness is received. And lastly, if the proxy provider is allowing the use of residential proxies for any use case, that should be a red flag too. If you clearly explain how the app is going to be used for the device owner, the proxy provider should not allow some of the unethical or even illegal use cases such as spamming, credential stuffing, or even payment card fraud.
Alright, and moving on to the third question. If residential proxies that we use for our web scraping operations get blocked frequently, can it mean that the IP address owner did not give a consent for their IP to be used as a proxy? Now, I can try and answer that. So, not necessarily. There are plenty of reasons why residential proxies can get blocked or be slow. So if you're unsure whether your residential proxies are ethically sourced, perhaps try checking the provider's public media, articles on the matter, and see if the provider had any scandals or any issues regarding their business. We'll also be talking about it a little bit more in Oxycon, so you can also hear it out there. Alright, so on the fourth question, whose responsibility is it to make sure that the residential proxies are legit? Is it the ISP, the device owner, proxy provider, or the company that uses proxies?
Yeah, so I believe that currently each participant partially shares some responsibility to ensure ethical use of it. The device owner should be cautious before installing any suspicious and unknown apps and granting excessive permissions. Then the proxy provider is responsible for screening and setting the high standards for their providers while sourcing them. But at the end of the day, if the company itself fails to ensure that they are dealing with an ethical provider, they will suffer the consequences too. And this is the reason why we want to educate the whole market about it.
All right. So moving on, another question. Is there a way to combat the use and sale of stolen IPs? I would say that the short answer is if you use a trusted proxy provider, such as Oxylabs, should be fine.
Yes, for sure. Yes, and if you're referring to residential proxies, then it depends how these residential IPs are being sourced, and and this is why we're placing such emphasis on awareness. Regarding data center IPs, major proxy providers like Oxylabs are working with IP brokers, data centers, or internet service providers, ISPs, and they would not want to broke their reputation with stolen IPs. And this is why we're not dealing with private individuals and we're dealing with those entities.
All right. And the last question, how can I find out if an app I downloaded is using my IP as a proxy without my consent? So I can answer this as I went and asked some developers about this, and well, sadly, there's little public information about such apps that use your IP as a proxy. So unless you have a really good technical background and try and build an infrastructure allowing you to catch apps that do this, I would suggest you check how much traffic certain applications on your phone use up or on tablets. There are several traffic monitoring apps that can help you out in this case. And that's it. That's it for the questions. Obviously, thank you very much for your sent in questions. So that's it for our webinar. To quickly wrap up the whole thing. So residential proxies can help businesses with multiple use cases, but they can also be used in a very wrong way.
Yes, so as a business, be careful what proxy service you choose as your provider.
And we'll be discussing more on ethical proxy sourcing, user consent, and related topics in greater depth in OxyCon. So this is the last reminder to register, and thank you for watching, and goodbye.
Thanks, guys.